Fang Chen heard this, smiled, cupped his hands and said, "Then I'll congratulate you in advance on entering the Sage Realm." At that moment, Hung Xiu stood in the distance, subtly casting a meaningful glance. Fang Chen understood tacitly, knowing she had something to ask. After a brief pondering, he walked over. Hung Xiu frowned slightly and asked in a low voice, "During my battle earlier, my chest hurt a lot. Did something happen to Lu Zhu?" Fang Chen answered truthfully, "She almost died, but she's safe now." Hung Xiu frowned, reckless. With her meager strength, she still goes to the primordial hunting grounds to court death. After speaking, she gazed deeply at Fang Chen and pressed on, "You didn't do anything to her, did you?" Fang Chen was stunned for a moment, then realized she was referring to Lu Zhu, pressing against him like an octopus. Even though separated by a world, Hung Xiu had sensed some of it. Fang Chen hurriedly waved his hands and said solemnly, "I didn't do anything to her." Then he raised his palm and emphasized, "I swear to the heavens." Hung Xiu was inwardly puzzled. She had clearly felt her chest being squeezed by something, as if Fang Chen was pressing Lu Zhu beneath him. Yet Fang Chen swore so earnestly, it didn't seem like he was lying. She could only warn again, "Don't touch her. This is my final warning." It's no exaggeration to say that whatever Fang Chen does to Lu Zhu, he does to her. Lu Zhu alone facing Fang Chen is like a little lamb facing a big bad wolf. Just the thought of it makes Hung Xiu's heart tremble with fear. Fang Chen coughed dryly twice and smiled apologetically. "Cough, cough, I won't. Don't you trust my character?" Then he changed the subject, said solemnly, "All right, I need to prepare for the imminent battle. Farewell." With that, he strode off under Hung Xiu's knife-sharp gaze. If he hadn't mentioned his character, it might have been fine, but bringing it up made Hung Xiu even more worried. At the edge of a battlefield lay the colossal mountain, like corpse of a giant king. Fang Chen leaned against the icy corpse, and with a thought, took out the enormous head of the Blood Moon King. He casually plucked the 5 stars embedded in the forehead one by one. Then a flash of light from his brow, he sent out 5 soul spikes, piercing them into the 5 stars. From within one star, a sharp, mournful shriek suddenly erupted. As expected, the Blood Moon King had split off a wisp of soul, hidden within its origin star. Fang Chen's eyes turned cold, and he decisively used the soul, hooking art to forcibly drag its soul out. The star immediately transmitted a terrified plea. "No, don't kill me. Give me a chance to live. I know the secret of the Black Sun King." Fang Chen's gaze flickered, and he asked in a deep voice, "What secret?" The Blood Moon King hurriedly said, "I know it left a hidden Angel Clan treasure in its vault. It can guide Angel Clan members to find a 9-winged Archangel's sanctum." Upon hearing this, Fang Chen's pupils contracted sharply. A 9-winged Archangel is equivalent to a human sage of 3 calamities, or a giant 9, Sun Emperor. As for the sanctum, it is presumably akin to a human's cave abode. If this is true, what an immense opportunity it would be. The master of the first rank tower of Fang Chen merely picked up a broken angel's blade in some ruins and managed to slay a giant emperor. A casually obtained archangel bone could even conceal a person's divine ring. He could hardly imagine what might be hidden in the ruins of a 9-winged archangel. However, how much of the Blood Moon King's words can be trusted? Fang Chen pressed, "How do you know?" The Blood Moon King dared not hide anything, trembling, because that item was discovered by me and him together. We agreed that once we find the Angel Clan, we would explore it together. Spare my life, and I'll take you to the Black Sun King's vault to find that item, then lead you to the sanctum. Fang Chen's eyes flickered for a while, finally retracting the soul, hooking art and coldly warned, "Better not deceive me." Saying this, he casually tossed this origin star into a soul crystal. Then he took out the domain mirror and casually inserted it to one side. The purple-crimson princess opened her eyes, staring intently at Fang Chen. "What are you going to do?" Without a word, Fang Chen directly took out a small mountain of materials, each containing deadly poison. In his mind, he silently visualized the poisons from the true scripture of poison origin that could poison ancient giant kings to death. There were quite a few poison recipes. The most potent ones could even poison a giant emperor. Unfortunately, the refinement was extremely difficult, and the materials were insufficient. Finally, he selected a deadly poison called Mistrap Powder. This was a 6 goo poison, possessing a guaranteed killing effect only against giant kings of 2 stars and below. Its toxicity wasn't the strongest, and the refinement difficulty was also not low. But it had a unique advantage: it was in mist form. Once unleashed, it could easily spread hundreds of zhang, and as long as the giant kings were densely packed, its lethality would be no less than him unleashing a perfect domain once. Having chosen this poison, Fang Chen quickly picked out the corresponding materials from the pile and began refining on the spot. Half an hour later, 10 3-goo poison pills appeared before his eyes. The purple crimson princess watched the whole process and finally understood what Fang Chen was up to. She scoffed, "So this is your so-called gift. It seems I overestimated you sometimes. This level of toxicity is useless against us." Fang Chen unhurriedly brought out the mountain and river cauldron, tossed the 10 poison pills into it, and continued refining. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, a condensed poison pill, emitting a faint purple smoke, slowly appeared in the cauldron. The 6-goo poison, mist trap powder, was finally refined. The purple crimson princess's expression instantly became solemn. Even through the domain mirror, she could clearly feel the terrifying power contained within that poison pill. Touch it and a tooth. Our giant king will certainly die. Even more terrifying, it was a spreading toxic mist. Her expression darkened slightly, and she slowly said, "You really did bring back something terrible from the primordial hunting grounds. If you had mastered this pill technique before our ancient giants descended, and given enough time, it truly would have caused a catastrophic disaster for us." At this, she paused, then sighed softly. "Unfortunately, it's already too late." Fang Chen stored the mist trap powder away and calmly said, "With those words from you, I'm reassured. It seems this pill's toxicity against your ancient giants is adequate." Purple Crimson Princess's shoulders trembled slightly, and she let out a light snort. "HMPH, it took over half an hour to refine one pill. Is that meaningful? Our reinforcements will arrive in, at most, a little over 2 hours." Fang Chen smiled without speaking and suddenly took out an hourglass, inverted it, and placed it before him. The snow-white fine sand within the hourglass began to slowly fall downward. The next instant, an invisible time domain abruptly enveloped a 3-ang radius around him. The purple crimson princess cultivated the essence of time, making her most sensitive to temporal shifts. Her expression changed drastically, and she cried out in a low voice, "Tenfold time acceleration law, where did you get that?" Her voice suddenly rose, tinged with sharpness and panic. Fang Chen smiled indifferently and said softly, "There's still plenty of time. Enjoy watching the gift I've prepared for your ancient giants." With the experience of preparing the poison pill earlier, he was now well practiced and could refine one in about half an hour. Thus, under the increasingly anxious gaze of the purple crimson princess, one after another 6-goo mist trap powder was produced. After just 1 hour outside, Fang Chen had spent a full 10 hours in the time acceleration. A full 20 mist trap powders were arranged in a row before him. Purple Crimson Princess gritted her silver teeth and asked, "How many giants can one poison pill kill?" Fang Chen put away the pills while casually saying, "If they're densely packed, one pill killing over 10 shouldn't be difficult." 10? The Purple Crimson Princess's heart tightened fiercely. With a total of 21 pills, wouldn't that be enough to poison over 200 giant kings? The 5 central armies together only had over 400 giant kings, with 1 star and 2 star ones accounting for 300. Could it be that Fang Chen alone could poison the majority? Her voice deepening, she retorted, "That's only in theory. Our giant kings aren't stupid. Why would they gather around you? Wait." Mid-sentence, she suddenly froze. She suddenly recalled that she had advised her father to kill Fang Chen at all costs first during the great battle. At that time, wouldn't the giant kings madly converge around Fang Chen? Her face changed drastically as she pounded on the domain mirror, her voice nearly hysterical. "You deliberately made me warn father, just so you could use the deadly poison to cause even greater casualties." Fang Chen shrugged and said lightly, "What else?" Princess Zhejiang clutched her head and screamed uncontrollably, "Fang Chen, you framed me again, you demon." Her proposal would cause the deaths of many, many ancient giants. Far more than the ones she had killed with her own hands last time. She hated herself bitterly. How could she be so stupid, falling for Fang Chen's tricks again and again? How could someone like him ever allow her to warn her father, allow her to cause him extra trouble? Once he allowed it, there must be an even greater scheme brewing. Fang Chen picked up the domain mirror, lightly tapped its surface with his fingertip, completely isolating her voice, then said coolly, "Now, fully appreciate the gift I've prepared. D for your ancient giants." Amid Princess Zhejiang's hysterical screams, Fang Chen tucked the mirror back into his robes. After doing all this, he looked toward the space-time hourglass that had long ceased dripping, a look of regret on his face, and murmured, "If the giant king doesn't come, it would have been a waste." Just as his words fell, an exceedingly seductive voice suddenly sounded from behind. Xiao Yan, see, I was right. The lecherous sage's lazy, mocking voice suddenly rang out. A man, once lonely, will even glance twice at a passing so. If you hadn't come, who knows what he'd do with this female giant. Fang Chen was slightly startled, then turned his head to look. Upon the corpse of the giant king behind him stood a peerlessly beautiful woman in a yellow dress, slender and graceful, with long flowing hair. Beside her floated a tattered jade paper heavenly book, embedded with a shattered, cursed solar wheel. On the book reclined a palm-sized soul woman. Her features were captivating, with a beauty mark at the corner of her mouth, her expression lazy, and she was rolling her eyes at Fang Chen. This was the master of the jade paper heavenly book, the lecherous sage. As for the woman in the yellow dress, she was naturally the Zhenyan sage. Fang Chen jumped up excitedly and blurted out, Zhenyan, when did you get here? The Zhenyan sage looked at the slightly haggard Fang Chen, a hint of apology in her eyes, and said softly, I just arrived, are you all right? She also hadn't expected that entering the fire well of the fire worship cult once, and then coming out again, the outside world would have changed so drastically. She had missed the great decisive battle in taking prefecture, and also missed the great battle in the Central Plains. She had even missed Fang Chen's grand wedding and his divine transformation. In just 2 short days, she had missed so much. She couldn't help but feel uneasy, thinking Fang Chen would blame her. Fang Chen seemed a bit unaccustomed. In his memory, the Zhenyan sage had rarely given him a good face. Today, she was much gentler. He asked with concern, I'm fine, what about you? Did this lecherous sage seriously pass on the legacy to you? The lecherous sage on the jade paper heavenly book lazily sat up and chuckled. Lecherous, so what? As if you're not lecherous. If you weren't, why would you pick such a beautiful woman as Xiao Yan to be your wife? Fang Chen ignored the old hag, his eyes looking at the Zhenyan sage with concern. The Zhenyan sage looked at the small figure beside her with gratitude and replied, the senior has been as gracious as a mountain to me. She passed on all of her lifelong knowledge and helped me comprehend the true words Tao, aiding my soul's growth. Fang Chen breathed a sigh of relief. He had always worried that this smooth, talking woman was unreliable. Since the other party had kept her promise to pass on the legacy to Zhenyan, Fang Chen also honored his word. With a grab, he retrieved the blood essence he had infused into the jade paper heavenly book. The lecherous sage was overjoyed. Because Fang Chen had refined the jade paper heavenly book with his blood essence, she hadn't been able to return to it, but now it was finally resolved. With a sway of her figure and a soft whoosh, she instantly slipped into the heavenly book. From within the heavenly book came her satisfied sigh. Ah, it's still better inside, hugging me so tightly, warm and comfortable. I'm never coming out again. I'm dead in love with the inside. Fang Chen and the Zhenyan sage looked at each other, both showing odd expressions. Fang Chen said with some worry, Zhenyan, will she follow you from now on? Over time, won't you be corrupted by her? The Zhenyan sage gave a helpless bitter smile. Aside from loving to tease me, the senior is quite good in other aspects. Fang Chen looked disdainful, thinking inwardly, how could there be such a sage? If it weren't for Zhenyan sage's sake, he would have kicked her away long ago. The Zhenyan sage looked around and, frowning slightly, asked Fang Chen, what's going on in Hunyuan Prefecture? Why is there such dense, righteous Kai? Fang Chen recalled the blue wish paper where he had previously sworn a great heaven and earth oath. The righteous Kai within it was merely a small part of Hunyuan prefectures. He truly didn't know what the Xingyuan Great Venerable was doing by producing so much righteous Kai. He probed, I also want to know, why don't we go pay a visit to your father together? He felt it was necessary for father and daughter to talk openly. The Xingyuan Great Venerable was no heartless scoundrel who would find new love while his wife's bones were still warm. The Zhenyan sage's expression returned to its usual coldness, her eyes devoid of any father-daughter affection for the Xingyuan Great Venerable, and she said decisively, I don't want to see him again. Perhaps feeling her tone to Fang Chen was too harsh, she softened her voice. I know what you want to say. How could someone who cares so much for the world abandon his own family? It must be my misunderstanding. I thought the same, and I questioned him face to face. But his answer to me was exactly as the rumors say. I haven't wronged him. Fang Chen furrowed his brow in confusion, wondering, how could this be? Was there some hidden reason? The Zhenyan sage gently shook her head, a trace of gentleness appearing in her eyes. There's no need to dwell on my affairs with the Xingyuan Great Venerable anymore. After so many years, I've long let go. I have no family left in this world. You're the only half one. Fang Chen's heart rippled slightly as he looked at the Zhenyan sage in surprise. What did she mean? The Zhenyan sage looked away shyly and said softly, Thank you for risking your life to find me in the fire well. After the war ends, marry me, I'll marry you. Fang Chen's eyes widened bit by bit, utterly not expecting the Zhenyan sage to say such words. A faint unnatural blush rose on the Zhenyan sage's cheeks, but she still said frankly, though there's no romantic love between us, you are my first man, and I'm willing to follow you, unable to tell lies. Every statement she uttered came from her heart. But after speaking for a long while without receiving a reply, she glanced sideways and saw Fang Chen standing there in a daze. Embarrassed, she stamped her foot and urged urgently, "Just give me an answer." This was her declaring her feelings, yet Fang Chen left her hanging without a reply, making her extremely awkward. Fang Chen came to his senses, stepped forward, and naturally wrapped his arm around her waist. The Zhenyan sage made a token twist, but Fang Chen held her tighter, pulling her entire body into his embrace. His broad chest tightly enveloped her slender frame. Feeling the hot breath on her face and the burning heat of his chest, she said unnaturally, Are you mute? Say something." Fang Chen replied with a smile, "Who can refuse a beautiful wife? If we survive until the war ends, then I'll marry you." Receiving a definite answer, the Zhenyan sage's hanging heart finally settled. She had truly feared Fang Chen would flatly refuse and embarrass her. She lightly pounded Fang Chen's chest and said coquettishly, "You know what's good for you. If you dared to refuse, you'd see." Fang Chen chuckled. "Oh, what would happen if I refused?" Without hesitation, the Zhenyan sage took out a large pair of scissors and waved them. "Have you forgotten this?" Fang Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could he forget? Back then, the Zhenyan sage had chased him from taking prefecture all the way to Hunyuan prefecture with these scissors. He never expected that in the end, by karmic coincidence, their ill-fated bond turned into a good one, ultimately uniting them through a series of misunderstandings and mishaps. His mind involuntarily recalled that absurd yet alluring night, and now with the warm fragrance in his arms, his gaze gradually turned heated. The Zhenyan sage noticed Fang Chen's change, and her face also turned red. She struggled lightly. "Let go of me. There are many people here." Before she could finish, her red lips were sealed. She offered a token resistance, then, realizing it was futile, simply closed her eyes and surrendered to Fang Chen's lead in his arms. Fang Chen's hand smoothly slid onto her slender waist. Just as he was about to grip it firmly, a sudden, rapid metallic clangor clash, clash, rang out. The evil sword on his back began vibrating with violent intensity. The faintly outlined carvings on the blade grew noticeably clearer. Jolted awake by the sudden noise, Zhenyan broke free from Fang Chen's arms in a fluster. She wiped her slightly numb lips and blushed, muttering, "So annoying." Fang Chen turned his head in irritation, tore the evil sword off, threw it to the ground, and stomped on it twice, cursing, "What a killjoy." Venerable Zhenyan asked, puzzled, "Why does your sword move on its own?" Fang Chen replied dismissively, "It can't stand seeing me happy. You giving in to me made it lose its temper." Venerable Zhenyan was astonished. "There's such a strange artifact spirit. Then if I live with you in the future, won't it be even angrier?" As if having heard those words, the evil sword clanged even more furiously. Fang Chen's eyes showed surprise. When he broke through to the divinity transformation realm, the artifact spirit hadn't been this agitated. Yet now, merely some tender moments with Zhenyan had triggered such fury. If he truly married her, wouldn't it be so enraged that it would evolve into a quasi-realm artifact on the spot? He mused inwardly, truly wondering what power a quasi-realm evil sword would possess, and felt a sudden hint of anticipation. Calculating the time, less than half an hour remained until the end of the wilderness hunt. Above the skies, creeping black pillar, all was still. The giant's reinforcements were unlikely to arrive in time. The end of the war was imminent. He had promised Yu Mingzhu that he would marry her if he survived the great battle. And now he had made a promise to Zhenyan as well. When the time came, he would marry them both together. Suddenly, with a sharp whoosh, the little head of the lecherous sage popped out of the jade paper heavenly book without warning. Fang Chen shot her a glare and said irritably, "You were spying." The lecherous sage's expression was uncharacteristically grave. He surveyed the world around him and sighed heavily. The aura of the primordial chaos state has changed. Fang Chen's heart jolted violently. He immediately looked toward the Grand Libationer and the others. He then noticed that, at some unknown moment, those venerable figures had already assumed grave expressions. They seemed to have sensed something, staring solemnly toward the sky above the skies, draping black pillar. And the sixth Sun Giant Emperor, who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground with eyes tightly shut, now slowly opened his eyes. A cold smirk curled at the corner of his lips. "It seems time is on our side. An hour and a half is enough to crush you completely." Across the world of primordial chaos state, an aura of primeval savagery grew thick at an astonishing speed. Even when the three great armies had descended together earlier, the aura had been nowhere near this oppressive. It was clear that the ancient giants arriving this time far outnumbered the previous force. Hang Xiu, puzzled, furrowed her brow and asked, "How can this be? The area above Heaven State corresponds to the central tribe. For an army to march from there to here would take at least half a day. How could they arrive so much earlier?" As someone from the southern Heaven Realm, she knew the distances between tribes like the back of her hand. Her estimation of marching speed could not be off by much. Unless Hang Xiu's gaze slowly shifted from above the skyscraping black pillar toward the direction of the Imperial Observatory. Fang Chen suddenly realized something as well, his expression instantly turning extremely grim. If there was any way for this army of ancient giants to reach the battlefield with such supernatural speed, then only one possibility remained. They had utilized a state-level teleportation formation in one of the states. However, a perplexing doubt churned in Fang Chen's mind. Even though no divinity transformation realm experts remained to guard the various states, the nascent soul realm powerhouses were all present. Most especially, the Imperial Observatory was heavily guarded by formidable celestial wardens. If the ancient giants forcibly seized a state-level teleportation formation, the Imperial Observatory would have dispatched personnel to primordial chaos state immediately to report it. Yet even now, no Imperial Observatory from any state had sent word of any anomaly. Just then, the Grand Libationer and others sensed something, and all turned their heads toward the Imperial Observatory. Among them, the benevolent sage's face showed alarm, as if suddenly realizing something. A flicker of guilt flashed rapidly in his eyes. It seemed the source of that primeval aura had finally been pinpointed. It was indeed at the Imperial Observatory. The ancient giants had borrowed the state-level teleportation formation of some state and rushed onto the battlefield ahead of time. Fang Chen abruptly soared into the air, his expression laden with extreme gravity, and sighed in a low voice, "This tribulation ultimately cannot be avoided." Before his words finished, the leaders of the wilderness hunt, with young Masters Xiang, Yanwang Xiao, and Liu Baihuang at the fore, all rose into the air together. Young Master Xiang placed one hand behind his back, the other gripping his sword hilt steadily. His eyes were disdainful, exuding a domineering aura. "I have long awaited you." On the other side, Yanwang Xiao's face was terrifyingly grim. "Just how many ancient giants have come? This primeval aura is far too dense." The faces of Liu Baihuang, Jiang Yishan, and numerous other powerhouses were each uglier than the last. The time limit was nearly up, and they were just about to return home safely. But at this final moment, the ancient giants had arrived. As expected, that forbidden ominous ground deep within the Black River would never let the war end so easily. "I fear we are all going to be slowly dragged to death right here in the Central Land. Don't lose heart just yet, let's see how many enemies there are first." Boom, 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 boom. The land, already reduced to a wasteland, began to quake violently. Countless iron hooves trampled the earth of primordial chaos state, merging into a torrent of destruction that rolled mightily toward this place. At the far horizon, dust churned like giant dragons, and mountains collapsed with thunderous crashes as indescribably colossal beings rammed through them. Then, the muffled clashing of weapons resounded without end. This fully armed formation was something the previous ancient giant armies had completely lacked. Everyone held their breath, straining to see. They beheld an army of roughly 80 giant kings advancing like moving, majestic mountain ranges. They were no longer ordinary golden giant kings. Their entire bodies were clad in ancient bronze, colored armor, covering their massive forms tightly, leaving only a single huge vertical eye and a mouth exposed. In their hands, they all wielded golden spiked clubs of terrifying lethality. At the forefront, 230 yanked, all 5 star giant kings marched side by side. A deep, rumbling roar reverberated through the clouds. "The 5th Army of the Central Tribe has reached the battlefield, awaiting your Majesty's command." Immediately after, another fully armed army arrived with earth-shattering momentum. "The 4th Army of the Central Tribe has reached the battlefield, awaiting your Majesty's command." "The 3rd Army of the Central Tribe has reached the battlefield, awaiting your Majesty's command." The 2nd Army of the Central Tribe. The 1st Army of the Central Tribe. 5 massive giant king legions assembled. They stretched like endless mountain ranges, completely severing the boundary between heaven and earth. Fang Chen's eyes revealed unprecedented gravity. He said in a low voice, 10-5, Star Giant Kings, 400 ordinary Giant Kings, and all clad in bronze armor. Princess Zhejiang had lied. The army deployed against Heaven State was far more than merely twice as strong as those used against ordinary states. The sheer numbers alone were more than double. Not to mention this bronze armor, which had never been seen before. Liu Bianhuang's pupils contracted sharply, his voice trembling. What is the deal with your Southern Heaven Realm's Giant Kings? Why do they have armor? Yan Wangxi also drew a sharp breath, shocked. This is netherworld armor, something only the Asura race can forge. It's capable of withstanding full-force attacks from those of the same realm. The Central Land is doomed, completely doomed. We're all going to be dragged to death on this Central Land battlefield. Seeing this, Fang Chen suddenly recalled that in the stone cone space of the Myriad Tribulations, Sacred Hall, he had seen a large number of angel race corpses. They had all been clad in armor. The armor worn by these giant kings before him bore a certain resemblance to the battle armor of those angels. However, the armor on the giant kings was even larger and more ferocious. Fang Chen looked toward Hung Xiu nearby. Her eyes were also filled with shock, a frosty chill already settling on her face. She gritted her teeth and coldly said, "These accomplices in evil, the Dark Asura race. Are they truly unafraid of a devastating reckoning to come? The Dark Asura clan." Fang Chen's gaze abruptly sharpened as he swiftly scanned the surroundings. Only now did he realize that since the powerhouses from various realms had descended upon the Central Plains, that brother and sister of the Dark Asura clan had never appeared, nor had they ever raised a hand against the ancient giants. An intense killing intent flickered in his eyes, but there was no time now to settle scores with them. Fang Chen suppressed his rage and asked in a deep voice, "Is the Senluo armor truly so formidable?" Hung Xiu nodded gravely. This is also because yin energy is extremely scarce in the heavenly realm. If the armor were fully charged with yin energy, its defensive power would rise another level. Fang Chen's expression was so dark, it seemed as if water could drip from it. He slowly extended his hand and tightly grasped Venerable Zhenyin's hand. Venerable Zhenyin's heart trembled. She instantly felt the resolute intent conveyed through Fang Chen's palm. He would not live to see the war's end and could not marry her. Truly, is there no chance of victory at all? Her voice was slightly hoarse. We've survived so many difficult battles, haven't we? Fang Chen took a deep breath, slowly closed his eyes and shook his head. There is no hope. A full 400 giant kings, all clad in heavy armor. We have not the slightest sliver of hope for victory. Venerable Zhenyin turned her gaze toward the group of otherworld powerhouses and asked with a trace of hope, "Aren't there still them to help us?" Fang Chen's eyes dimmed, his tone carrying a bone-chilling coldness. In a great battle, where there is still a sliver of hope for victory, they would fight with everything they have. But faced with such a hopeless dead end, they will only choose to preserve their own strength, keep far from the battlefield, and wait for an opportunity to flee the Central Plains. As if to confirm his words. After coldly weighing the pros and cons, many otherworld powerhouses began to retreat one after another, flying away toward the outskirts of the battlefield without looking back. There was no longer any possibility of victory in this battle. It was destined that they would never return to the primal hunting ground. Since the outcome was already decided, why stay and throw their lives away for others in vain? To preserve their lives and find a chance to escape the Central Plains was the wisest choice. 1, 2, 3. In a short while, the majority of the otherworld powerhouses had fled completely away. Liu Bianhuang venomously glared at Fang Chen, then also decisively turned and retreated. Yan Wangxiao, even more skilled in self-preservation, vanished in a flash without a word, retreating far away. In the end, only a scattered few otherworld powerhouses remained at their posts. Young Master Xiang remained composed and unruffled, slowly drawing his cold, forbidding imperial longsword, and declared proudly, "To retreat when facing a strong foe is not what this sovereign does." Zhang Yishan had also intended to leave, but he stared fixedly at the damned ancient dark beings and snorted angrily, "It's not too late to leave after I've exhausted all the deadly poisons on me." Seeing this scene, the hearts of the Central Plains army sank by a great measure. Venerable Zhenyin's lips quivered slightly. It seemed the Central Plains had truly reached its end, with no more hope. But feeling the warm, large hand tightly gripping hers, after a moment's hesitation, she tightened her 5 fingers forcefully and gripped him back even more firmly. She turned her eyes and gave Fang Chen an unwaveringly steady look, softly saying, "I will accompany you to the very end." A sorrow so thick it could not be dissolved welled up in Fang Chen's eyes. He had just promised to marry her after the war ended. Yet this promise ultimately could not be fulfilled. He gazed back at her deeply and said in a heavy voice, "All right, stay close by my side in a moment." Then Fang Chen scanned around and suddenly shouted, "White tiger." The white tiger, trembling in the distance, came running at the sound, its tiger eyes filled with unease. Fang Chen looked at it with guilt and said quietly, "Sorry, I've implicated you. Here I return your soul. Go find your own path." As he spoke, he reached out and took out that wisp of the white tiger's soul and returned it. Forcibly, keeping the white tiger by his side could not change the inevitable death, so it was better to let it go free. The white tiger was stunned, clearly not expecting Fang Chen to release it at this moment. It hesitated for an instant, then solemnly caught that wisp of soul with its forehead. As the soul entered its body, it finally regained its freedom. Yet it did not leave. The white tiger did not speak human words. Instead, it slowly extended its huge tiger paw, and in the dust on the ground, traced the outline of a coffin, and even added a small human figure inside. Fang Chen focused and discerned it for a moment, then said flatly, "You want to stay and collect my corpse?" The white tiger heavily nodded its large head. Fang Chen laughed, the laughter first low, then long and drawn out, "He he he." His shoulders shook incessantly with laughter. The deep laughter echoed over the battlefield, like sunlight piercing through dark clouds, spreading across heaven and earth. "Since someone will collect my corpse, what fear is there in this battle?" Before his words faded, he grabbed Venerable Zhenyin's hand, leaped onto the broad forehead of the white tiger, and looking down at the ancient giants surging like mountain ranges below, let out a long, loud laugh. "Fang Chen of the Central Plains is here. Come at me." The master of the Fang Chen first-class tower flickered and instantly swept to Fang Chen's side, looking disdainfully ahead and proclaiming with a voice like a great bell, "The name less of the Central Plains is here." Great Venerable Jinlin followed closely, shouting domineeringly, "Great Venerable Jinlin of the Central Plains is here. The Star Cluster Mountain Master, Great Venerable Iceheart, and Great Venerable 10,000 weapons, all transformed into streams of light, flashing over." In unison, they shouted, "All Great Venerables of the Central Plains are here. Heart Demon Venerable of Great Taking Province is here. Ping Tian of Great Taking Province is here. Ming Yi of Great Taking Province is here. Great Taking Province." One after another, tall and straight figures cut through the sky. Deity transformation venerables of the Central Plains flashed to surround Fang Chen in succession. They were the guardians who went against the current in the deluge of world destruction, the sparks of fire that lit the path forward in the long dark night. Their declarations of "here" forged the unyielding backbone of the Central Plains. Those pairs of resolute eyes wove together the undying faith of the Central Plains. At this moment, it was the end of the Central Plains, yet also the time when the stars shone their brightest. Groups of towering figures burning themselves for their ideals illuminated the expanse of eternal time, leaving behind a legend that would never fade. Even if the Central Plains were destroyed, their wills would surely spread like sparks across the myriad heavens and realms, ultimately igniting the entire starry sky. The powerhouses from the various realms were utterly shaken by this scene before them. In the face of the torrent of fate, the deity transformation venerables of the Central Plains had actually displayed such formidable willpower. Fully aware they were outmatched, they resolutely struggled against fate, unrepentant even in death. This supremely tragic and heroic sight caused many otherworld powerhouses who had originally turned to flee to involuntarily halt their steps. "Forget it, even if I return. My homeland has long been destroyed. This broken body can just remain in this foreign land. We are all suffering beings living under the ancient dark creatures. Why distinguish this realm from that realm? Let's fight for the Central Plains. If I die in battle, the people of my homeland will be proud of me. As a fellow human, I will contribute my meager strength, hoping for a great victory of the Central Plains, so that it will never again suffer under the dark beings." One after another, the otherworld powerhouses who had already fled actually turned back one by one. In the face of the fate of all living beings, they cast aside their otherworld identities and initiated an unprecedented joint battle of the myriad realms since ancient times. At this moment, the sparks of the Central Plains ignited throughout all realms. A flash of shock passed through the eyes of the 6 Suns giant emperor. Having experienced the baptism of the 10,000-year great calamity, the will and flame of the Central Plains had not only not extinguished, but grew even stronger. What exactly supported these trailblazers as they advanced wave after wave, crashing against the canopy of fate like moths darting into flames? He slowly closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, killing intent already surged like ocean tides. This time, the Central Plains will have no more chances. Kill. The final battle erupted completely. The 400 giant kings charged over in a vast, mighty formation. Their dull footsteps seemed like rolling heavenly thunder, shaking heaven and earth incessantly. For a moment, the entire earth seemed to tilt. In Fang Chen's eyes blazed a fierce torch, and he shouted sternly, "Kill." Amidst heaven, shaking tiger roars, the white tiger leapt forth. Many deity transformation powerhouses also whistled as they charged forward, like fearless fireflies, swooping toward the dark, oppressive tide of bronze giants. The two sides clashed fiercely in front of a plain. The instant they collided, several bursts of blood mist exploded out. 3 deity transformation experts, in the very moment of collision, were smashed to pieces by that bronze torrent without leaving a trace of bone or corpse. The giant kings, already physically invincible, once clad in bronze armor, became like a whirled, destroying torrent that crushed all things in their path like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The flesh and blood bodies of the humans were utterly defenseless against them. The long human battle line was torn apart with ease. What awaited them was the giant flood splitting through, surrounding them, and killing them one by one. The 6 Sun Giant Emperor's eyes flashed with cold light. He had not forgotten his daughter's warning and barked an order: prioritize killing Fang Chen, spare no cost. With that, he boldly met the charging human sage. The giant kings who received the command immediately locked onto Fang Chen, for he was charging at the very forefront, straight into the vanguard, far too easy to spot. 5th Legion, all troops, advance. Objective: kill Fang Chen. The nearest 5th Legion turned in unison and pounced toward Fang Chen. Careful, the distant lord of Fang Mountain 1st Grade Pavilion shouted urgently. Just how much did the giants fear Fang Chen to mobilize an entire legion to hunt him alone? How could he alone withstand the frenzied assault of a full 80 giant kings? The lord of Fang Mountain 1st Grade Pavilion wanted to rush over to aid, but could barely protect himself. The surrounding divine transformation cultivators also faced enemies several times their number. They simply could not spare any attention. They could only watch helplessly as Fang Chen, riding his white tiger, was trapped in layer upon layer of giant king encirclement. Fang Chen stood steadily on the tiger's back, his gaze sweeping over all directions with disdain. One after another, giant kings radiating suffocating pressure, charged forward ferociously. In his mind, he silently counted the distance between them: 100 zhang, 50 zhang, 30 zhang, 10 zhang. The giant king, at the very front, could already reach Fang Chen with the huge spiked club in his hand. And then all 10 giant kings stepped within the 100 zhang range. Fang Chen raised his hand and brought out the domain mirror, saying coldly, "Princess, watch closely. This is the final gift I leave for your giants." Princess Zaijiang watched the dark mass of giants, closing within 100 zhang of Fang Chen. She pounded frantically on the mirror's barrier, shrieking in desperation. But her voice could not escape the domain mirror at all. In the chaotic battlefield, no one noticed her tiny figure within the mirror. And so, under the gaze of her fear-contracted pupils, Fang Chen stretched out his palm, and a purple pill silently emerged in his hand. As his 5 fingers suddenly clenched, the pill burst with a sound. A shockwave of immense force, carrying thick purple poisonous mist, howled outward in all directions, instantly blanketing the 100 zhang radius centered on Fang Chen. A hair-raising scene unfolded. The 2-star giant king closest to Fang Chen was the first to be sprayed by the purple poison mist. His skin instantly festered, flesh turned to black sludge, and even his bones melted. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic behemoth dissolved into a pool of foul blood, unable to even let out a scream. The enormous armor, losing its support, collapsed with a crash. And he was not alone. The 10 ones, Star and Tus, Star giant kings enveloped in the poison mist, all met the same fate, instantly turning into pools of blood, the clatter of collapsing armor echoing densely all around. The 2-5-star giant kings' faces drastically changed. They quickly clustered together and roared, "Beware the poison mist, retreat. Throw your clubs, activate your origin power, attack from range." Fang Chen laughed aloud. "If the mountain will not come to me, I shall go to the mountain. Giants, welcome to the hell of the Middle Lands." The white tiger beneath him gave a low growl, then leaped into the very center of the 5th Legion. Fang Chen once again detonated a smoke veil pill, and within 100 zhang, the 1-star and 2-star giant kings rotted into sludge on the spot. "Aunt seeking death, a 5-star giant king howled in grief and fury. This poison mist was too vicious. It did no harm to humans, demonkind, or Asura, but was devastatingly lethal to their ancient giants. The bronze armor they prided themselves on could not block even a wisp of the poison mist. The white tiger growled low and nimbly leaped away, bounding elsewhere. Fang Chen then detonated yet another smoke veil pill. By the time the 5 Star Giant Kings, weighed down by heavy armor and with far less leaping ability than at their peak, caught up, they had already moved on to slaughter elsewhere. After repeating this several times within the vast 5th Legion, only 5 Star and 2 Star Giant Kings remained, trembling as they huddled around the 5 Star Giant Kings. Fang Chen of the Middle Lands, the 2 5 Star Giant Kings were utterly furious. In barely the span of 10 breaths, over 60 giants had been slaughtered. Fang Chen swept a cold glance over the remaining 5 Star and 2 Star Giant Kings, who trembled all over, the great vertical eyes on their armor filled with terror. In their eyes at that moment, Fang Chen was nothing short of a butcher. Fang Chen did not waste time or smoke veil pills on them, and ordered in a low voice, "Go to the next location." Hearing this, the white tiger leaped toward another fiercely battling Giant King army. Jiang Yishan was also among them. A Giant King's long tongue had pierced a bloody hole through his shoulder, making him grimace in pain. He cursed angrily, "Damn it, if I don't show my might, you'll think I'm a sick cat. Let you taste the power of 5 cup deadly poison, guaranteed to drop you instantly and leave you paralyzed." A fierce glint flashed in Jiang Yishan's eyes as he muttered, "This is the treasure that bastard Fang Chen dreams of getting his hands on. You lot are getting it cheap." He took out a bottle of thick, pitch-black liquid, about to toss it. But just then a sudden change occurred. A thick purple poison mist silently spread out, instantly blanketing everything within 100 Jiang radius. The 8 Star and 2 Star Giant Kings nearby couldn't even scream before they rotted on the spot in the poison mist, turning into a pile of sludge. Jiang Yishan was instantly stunned, muttering in disbelief, "S6 cup deadly poison." But this is clearly a method that only a senior Grand Poison Master from the Myriad Poisons world could concoct. How can it appear here? His heart leaped sharply, then joy spread across his face. He immediately cupped his hands toward all directions and shouted, "May I ask which senior of the poison path has lent aid?" Junior Jiang Yishan pays his respects to the senior. To encounter an expert of the poison path in a foreign land was heaven, sent good fortune. Jiang Yishan looked over with reverence, and saw a gigantic white tiger slowly striding out from the purple mist. Atop the tiger's head, Fang Chen held a purple lightning longsword reversed in his right hand, and a smoke veil pill in his left. He scanned the surroundings, confirming there were no more threats, then looked down at Jiang Yishan on the ground, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "Brother Jiang, there is no need for such grand courtesy." Jiang Yishan's eyes instantly went wide as saucers, and he cried out, "That 6 cup deadly poison was you." Fang Chen casually tossed the smoke veil pill in his hand to him, saying flatly, "For your self-defense." Jiang Yishan caught it, his eyes nearly popping out. 6 cup level smoke veil pills. Is this from the poison origin true scripture? Fang Chen unhurriedly took out another one and held it in his palm, ready to throw at any moment. He asked in surprise, "Isn't that obvious? Without your poison origin true scripture, where would I get smoke veil pills?" "Why?" Jiang Yishan felt his head spin and hurriedly said, "Give me a moment. You're saying, using my poison origin true scripture, you concocted a 6 cup deadly poison that even I can't make." Fang Chen was even more astonished. "So you actually can't make 6 cup yet? No way, no way. This is the poison origin true scripture you personally taught me." Those words were like a knife viciously stabbing Jiang Yishan in the lungs. He flushed bright red and roared, "Absolutely impossible. According to the poison origin true scripture, the deadly poison can at most reach the 3 cup level. How did you get 6 cup?" Fang Chen spread his hands, looking relaxed. "Isn't that simple? Just use a small artifact to condense 3 cup deadly poison into 6 cup, and there you go. Don't you do that." A small artifact can concentrate it to 6 cup. Then what was the poison, path domain, he had painstakingly cultivated for? Jiang Yishan's vision went black. A foul energy surged up his throat, nearly fainting on the spot. Fang Chen no longer looked at him and spoke seriously. "All right, Brother Jiang. If you survive this battle, I will share my insights on the selfless dust, cleansing art with you, as thanks for your help in this battle for the Middle Lands." Jiang Yishan forced himself to catch his breath, grimacing in anger. "I don't care about your insights. I'll comprehend it myself, HMPH. Both young men who would easily admit defeat. Fang Chen smiled gently. Just then the sound of tearing air suddenly erupted behind him. The 2 Heavenly Man 5 Decays experts of the 5th Army had already cast off their heavy armor, restored their axe speed, and roared as they came to intercept and kill him. Fang Chen's expression didn't change. His gaze sharpened, firmly locking onto the distant Fourth Army, and he shouted in a low voice, "Go!" The white tiger, already storing up momentum, leaped and took him into another fiercely contested battlefield. On this battlefield, Prince Xiang and 10 otherworldly experts were locked in a chaotic, dark slaughter with the Fourth Army. More precisely, it was Prince Xiang, with 1 man and 1 sword, forcibly holding back the entire army. With a casual sweep of his sword, several giant kings were cleaved in 2 along with their armor. Of the 5 Star Giant Kings, 1 had already fallen. Enemies 8 times his number were all stopped by him alone with a single sword, exuding the peerless might of a single sword can block 1,000,000 soldiers. Fang Chen had just swept over when Prince Xiang drew his sword and struck again, and without looking back, said, "Go elsewhere. Here, this sovereign alone is sufficient." Fang Chen's heart shook violently, and a thread of hope broke through the soil. Since Prince Xiang could single-handedly block the army, they only needed to focus on the other 4 armies. And Fang Chen still had 15 Mistveil powder pellets left. If used properly, he could kill off most of the 1 Star and 2 Star Giant Kings in the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st armies. By then, the remaining 3 Star and above Giant Kings would number about 60, and the 1 Star and 2 Star Giants would number only about 60 as well. Altogether, just over 100. The allied forces of Central Land and the Otherworld could barely cope. His eyes instantly burst with a joyful light. Central Land was saved. As long as most of the remaining low-rank Giant Kings were slaughtered, Central Land would still have the strength to fight. Go, riding the white tiger, he plunged into the 3rd Army's formation in extreme excitement. Without another word, he hurled the Mistveil powder pellets fiercely. Layers of purple toxic mist exploded outward, and on the spot, a large number of Giant Kings wailed as they collapsed and rotted away. Fang Chen didn't pause at all, continuously flinging Mistveil powder pellets in all directions. The entire 3rd Army, just as he expected, had a full 51 Star and 2 Star Giant Kings poisoned alive to death. Fang Chen, a world-shaking roar resounded from within the 3rd Army. The 5 Star Giant Kings chasing after him were howling incessantly. If this continued, the tide of battle was truly about to be turned. Before the barrier of the domain mirror, Imperial Princess Zijing seemed insane, kicking the barrier desperately while shrieking, "Fang Chen, you will die a wretched death." She watched helplessly as Fang Chen slaughtered the 1 Star and 2 Star Giant Kings of the 5th and 3rd Armies to the last. In just a short moment, the number of low-rank Giant Kings Fang Chen had slain exceeded the total of all previous battles combined. Which damned soul, deserving 1,000 cuts and boiling oil, had taught him such venomous skills, making him even more terrifying, like a tiger given wings? What made Imperial Princess Zijing even more anxious was that Central Land was truly about to turn the tide. If Fang Chen was allowed to continue this slaughter, the heavenly realm would surely lose. "Fellow Taoist Fang, save me." A hoary cry suddenly rang out. Fang Chen looked toward the sound, his pupils abruptly contracting. It was Minj, Aishura King. At that moment, he was at the edge of the 2nd Army, being besieged by 4 Star Giant Kings. 4 times his own number, how could this elder, who had just broken through to the Shura King realm, withstand them? In just 3 to 5 exchanges, the crown on his head was shattered by brute force. His aged body was caught by the long tongues of 2 Giant Kings, wrapped around his head and legs simultaneously. With just a little more force from them, he would immediately be decapitated and separated from his body. How could Fang Chen dare to pause for even a second? He rode the white tiger, instantly shifted over, and crushed a Mistveil powder pellet in his hand on the spot. Under the radiation of the toxic mist, the 2 Giant Kings didn't even have time to tear Minj, Aishura King apart before they turned into a pile of rotten mush. Fang Chen leaped over and caught Minj, Aishura King, in time. Looking at the shattered crown on his forehead, Fang Chen gently comforted, "Friend Minjai, thank you for Central Land." Just as he was halfway through speaking, a sharp pain suddenly struck his chest. It was Minj, Aishura King, without any warning, thrusting a palm strike toward his heart. Fortunately, the Black Dragon battle armor was still there, and a crown-level Minj, Aishura King, simply couldn't pierce it. Having failed in his strike, he decisively snatched a spatial storage item from Fang Chen's body, then retreated with lightning speed. He kept retreating until he was near the 3rd Army, and only then barely stopped. Within the 3rd Army, the mountain, like Giant Kings, as if receiving a command, slowly parted to form a path. A pair of Shura clan members, clad in black robes and surrounded by yin energy, unhurriedly stepped out from it. It was the Tianjian siblings. Fang Chen's eyes flashed intensely with killing intent. It's you. He had just been wondering where the Tianjian siblings had hidden. It turned out they had long since joined forces with the Giant Kings. If so, Min Shai Shura King's strange actions just now were completely explained. Looking closely, Minjai Shura King's eyes were indeed empty, like a puppet, exactly like the controlled Lu Zhu from back then. Tianjian smirked triumphantly. Heh, didn't expect I still had one innate ability left unused, did you? He took the spatial storage item from Minjai Shura King's hand, shook it gently by his ear, and said with a mocking expression, "Sorry, but I'll be confiscating this dangerous poison for you." Venerable True Word's expression changed slightly. To think that the hope of turning the tide that Fang Chen had just seized was ruined by this Shura. Without thinking, Fang Chen summoned the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd. Seeing the gourd, a trace of wariness flashed in Tianjian's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and snorted coldly, "Don't try to intimidate me. When you used this gourd on Liu Bian Huang, its flaw was already exposed. You must know the target's name." He added sarcastically, "And sorry, but Tianjian is merely a pseudonym I use in the world. My true name is not Tianjian." "Is that so?" Fang Chen's gaze darkened. If that really wasn't his true name, the gourd truly couldn't do anything to him. Venerable True Word's bright eyes turned slightly, and her domain silently spread out. She opened her mouth and asked, "Then what is your name?" Tianjian glanced at True Word, the corner of his mouth curling up. He sneered inwardly, "Why would I tell you?" But when the words reached his lips, they inexplicably turned into, "My name is." Tianjian jolted awake, bit down hard on his voice, and his face darkened. "Your domain can control speech. Fortunately, you're only at the Heavenly Man 2 decays. Otherwise, I would have truly fallen into your trap today." A trace of cold sweat quietly seeped from his spine. A True Word domain alone is not frightening. It can even be said to pose no threat. But if combined with the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd, it becomes a deadly weapon. Having failed to extract his name, Venerable True Word was not discouraged. She unhurriedly took out the jade paper, heavenly book from her bosom. Holding the jade book in both hands, she silently chanted the spell. Layers of invisible energy, waves, surged out from the jade paper, heavenly book, and swirled around her. Amid the surging energy waves, her yellow dress fluttered up and down, and her black hair lifted gently. Her eyes became even more brilliant, with a faint ripple of law energy flickering rapidly. Her red lips parted slightly, and her ethereal voice gained a trace of an otherworldly tone, "Speak thy true name." The almost imperative words radiated out violently. Tianjian was once again enveloped by the domain. He sneered inwardly and simply kept his mouth shut. But who would have thought an invisible command akin to heavenly might force his mouth open uncontrollably? Dong Fang. Just as he uttered 2 syllables, his expression changed drastically. Fortunately, Tianqin, beside him, reacted extremely quickly and slapped a palm over his mouth, forcibly stopping his words. Tianqin urgently said, "Brother, let's go first. This woman is dangerous." Tianjian was also frightened and hurriedly teleported away. Venerable True Word frowned deeply, still a failure. This was already with the aid of the realm artifact jade paper heavenly book, reaching the point where words became law. Now that they were on guard, trying to get his name again would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Watching them flee, Venerable True Word looked at Fang Chen with an apologetic expression. But unexpectedly, after a thoughtful look, Fang Chen suddenly activated the orange gourd and tried shouting in a low voice, "Dongfang Tianjian." A screeching, sharp tearing sound rang out crack, and an orange chain instantly shot out, tightly binding Tianjian, who had already retreated among the ancient giants. Fang Chen's eyes lit up with delight. So it was indeed. Dongfang is the surname of the Dark Shura clan's royal family. As for Tianjian, Tianqin, and Tianji, they are clearly just their given names. Combined, that is his true name. Tianjian's face changed drastically. He flipped his palm, and a bone blade emitting yin energy slashed fiercely down. But the chain didn't budge at all. Tianjian panicked completely and cried out hastily, "Wait, don't kill me. I'll return the smoke veil powder to you." Fang Chen's eyes gleamed with cold light. Why would he believe a single word of it? He was merely stalling for time, waiting for the 2-5 Star Giant Kings of the 5th Army to arrive and kill. He barked coldly, "Collect." Tianjian's shriek exploded at the same time, Nuo. With a rapid, sucking gust of wind, Tianjian's terrified screaming was abruptly cut off, and his entire body was forcibly dragged into the gourd like a wisp of smoke.
Brother.
Tianqian shrieked and teleported over, attempting to snatch the gourd. But the white tiger slapped her, swatting her violently out of teleportation, her crowned Shura King body splitting open with several gruesome wounds, blood spraying into the air. Fang Chen held the gourd in his hand, yet his face showed no hint of joy. Because the smoke veil powder was on Tianjian and had been taken into the gourd along with him. Gazing at the surging, killing third army before him, sensing the two terrifying auras of 5 star giant kings behind him, and hearing the countless despairing roars of humans, and Shura, Fang Chen raised his head to look at the silent firmament. The gloomy sky had at some point unleashed a torrential downpour. The rain drenched his clothes and extinguished the hope in his heart. Rainwater flooded his face and trickled down his chin in streams. His shoulders trembled slightly as he let out an utterly bitter laugh. Our central land is not doomed by the ancient dark beings. Venerable Zhenyan heard the immense unwillingness and grief in his voice. If their enemies were only the ancient dark beings, the central land would have won long ago. First, unknown individuals let the giants pass through the state-level teleportation array to reach the battlefield early. Then came the sneak attack by the Dark Shura clans, Ian, it was this that completely extinguished the central land's only remaining flame of hope, plunging it back into darkness. So many had been sacrificed, yet in the end, the same fate awaited. Those martyrs who threw themselves into the conflagration like moths to a flame, had they all died in vain? She looked at Fang Chen, laughing bitterly to the sky in the rain, an indescribable sorrow welling up inside her. She had personally witnessed this man venture alone into the Black Sun Royal Court to learn the giant's secrets, returning only after countless brushes with death. She had also seen him risk death without a second thought to save a Star Abyss Great Exalt, just to give the central land one more sliver of hope for victory. And she had even seen with her own eyes how, with nothing more than a nascent soul body, he faced 4 giant kings alone, fighting desperately to carve out a glimmer of hope. And now, after giving his all, he had returned from the primordial hunt halo as the first-place champion. But reality had nothing but cruelty to offer this man, time and again. Venerable Zhenyan's eyes reddened as she gently took his hand and said softly, "Fang Chen, you've done more than enough. It's just, the destiny of our central land has run out." Fang Chen's bitter smile deepened. He took out the 9-colored crystal. The 9-hued lightning upon it reflected off his face with flickering radiance. He surveyed the living beings locked in bitter struggle, teetering on the brink of destruction. Looking at his homeland about to fall, a grief beyond words filled his heart. Finally, he turned to the beautiful woman beside him. "Will you die with a man like me, who lacks any real feelings?" Zhenyan, tears in her eyes, nodded gently. "All right, I'll go with you." She tightened her grip on Fang Chen's hand. 2 silhouettes in the curtain of rain at the end of the road leaned quietly against each other. Fang Chen clenched the 9-colored crystal tightly. Since the central land couldn't be saved, then he would take as many giants as he could down to hell with him.
Rumble.
Suddenly, a thunderous roar like shifting mountains violently shook the entire region. An ancient, desolate aura instantly swept across all directions. At the edge of the sky, 6 towering ancient steels, reaching into the clouds, slowly emerged through the air. Carved upon the steels were names that shook antiquity and dazzled the present. Tomb of the Central Land's Medicine, Exalt, the Ancient Heart Sage. Tomb of the Central Land's Confucian, Exalt, the Dusting, Quiring Sage. Tomb of the Central Land's War, Exalt, the Boundless Sage. Fang Chen turned his head to look, his eyes filled with astonishment and doubt. From the jade paper, heavenly book in Venerable Zhenyan's hand, the lustful sage suddenly emerged, gazing at the ancient steels with a complicated look. So, these old acquaintances also fell in that great battle 1,000 years ago. The implication was that these sages had all perished in the Great War millennia ago. But who is that? Dragging the tombstones of 6 sages with a mortal body. Has he gone mad? The sage's residual laws will kill him. Fang Chen looked over upon hearing this and was greatly shocked. Only then did he realize that the 6 tombstones were moving because an old man on the ground was trudging forward with them on his back. It was an old man dressed in gray sackcloth, a snow-white rabbit the size of a calf following closely beside him. It was none other than the unsentimental old hermit of the Gixu state, a great exalt at the celestial decay stage. He was bent and hunched under the weight of the 6 tombstones, shuffling with faltering steps. Each step was extraordinarily difficult. His once salt and pepper hair had, at some point, turned as white as snow. His eyes had lost their former luster. He was actually blind. The divine halo of the celestial decay at the back of his head had shattered completely, giving off waves of putrid stench. Even his soul was fractured and broken, and his body was barely under his control. Fang Chen's pupils constricted sharply. When they last met, the unsentimental old hermit had still been vigorous and spirited. Now, seeing him again, he had reached the brink of destruction. Was it because he was carrying the 6 sages' tombstones and suffering the erosion of their residual laws? In front of the unsentimental old hermit, an 18-year-old lovely young girl was walking. Her eyes, swirling with 9-hued colors, were fixed on the battlefield ahead. She held a stick in one hand, the other end leading the old hermit. "Have we arrived?" The unsentimental old hermit's voice was hoarse, like wind blowing through a broken pipe. Yu Mingju's eyes held tears as she choked. "We're here, master." The unsentimental old hermit finally stopped and slowly said, "Point out the direction for your master." Yu Mingju wept freely, her voice trembling. 30 lie southwest. The fortune is low. It is an omen of great calamity. She held the stick, carefully adjusting it toward the southwest. The unsentimental old hermit nodded his head, gave his shoulder a sharp shake, and growled in a low voice, "Go." A tombstone soared up with a thunderous roar and hurtled toward the place of low fortune. It was precisely where the Third Army was positioned, the most perilous battlefield, where the coalition forces of the Central Land and other realms were deeply encircled and on the brink. The tombstone howled as it crushed the void, teleported instantly, and crashed down violently upon the earth. The residual laws of the sage immediately erupted from the tombstone and radiated out in all directions. Whether they were 1 star giant kings or 5 star giant kings, all who were swept by it were shattered into bloody mist. In an instant, the sky was stained black with giant blood. Rivers of blood flowed across the land, and the Third Army, which had been nearly at full strength, was obliterated by more than half. Only 20, some giants, far away, narrowly escaped the calamity. When the laws swept over Fang Chen, Venerable Zhenyan, and the powerhouses from other realms, they too were affected. Fortunately, it only churned their blood and kai, and sharply reduced their vitality, without directly threatening their lives. The crowd watched the flying tombstone in awe. Within their originally despairing eyes, fervent light surged anew. There were still 5 complete tombstones left. Didn't that mean they could wipe out these giants to the last? But the lustful sage beside them let out a long sigh and shook his head. He won't last much longer. The laws have already destroyed everything within him. Sure enough, before the words had finished echoing, after hurling the first tombstone, the unsentimental old hermit's body suddenly shuddered, and he dropped heavily to one knee. When Yu Mingju saw this, she cried out mournfully, "Master, you." She instinctively wanted to beg her master to put down the tombstones, but then she thought of the central land behind them and could only swallow her words. Because the only thing that could turn the tide was the sage's tombstones that her master had prepared for over 50 years. The unsentimental old hermit slowly shook his head, his voice weak but resolute. "Don't mind me. When I accepted the grace of the sage's residual will back then, I promised them that when the central land reached its final extremity, I would bring their tombstones to aid the sea. Intral land one last time. Now that the giant king army has all gathered in Hunyuan state, the end of the central land has come. It is time to fulfill my mission." As soon as he finished speaking, the festering wound on his abdomen could no longer hold, and a length of necrotic intestine mixed with black blood spilled out. Those 6 tombstones were constantly gnawing away and destroying his body. But he had not a trace of regret. He had waited far, far too long for this moment. "Point out the direction one more time," the unsentimental old hermit barked in a low voice. Yu Mingju had long been weeping like rain. This was why she had not returned to take in Grand Prefecture with Fang Chen back then. She had to return to Gixu Prefecture to accomplish a great matter for her master. Her master told her that he would need to borrow her Son of Heaven's Kai observation technique on the battlefield. But only now did she realize that she had merely served as the eyes for her master, who had lost his sight, pointing out the direction for him to hurl the tombstones, so as to maximize the might of the sage tombstones. And her master, from beginning to end, had never told her that this mission would exhaust the last of his life. Yu Mingju bit her lips fiercely and shouted through tears, "True south, 60 lie." The forlorn wild elder's body shuddered once more, and another tombstone was violently shaken loose, carrying world, destroying might as it smashed into the second army. Though those giant kings had witnessed the Third Army's tragic fate and scattered in attempted escape, still 20 giant kings were suppressed and slain on the spot, bursting into bloody mists. Again, cough, cough. With a thud, the forlorn wild elder collapsed to the ground, coughing up copious dark, jet-black blood. He was already a spent arrow, at the very end of his strength. Yu Mingju bit her lip so hard it nearly bled, and said in a trembling voice, "Southeast 40 Lai." This time the forlorn wild elder did not act immediately. He could clearly feel that his final moment had finally arrived. When he hurled the next tombstone, it would be the moment of his death and the dissolution of his Tao. His utterly dimmed eyes looked painfully at Yu Mingju before him, filled with reluctance and tender affection. This master departs having fulfilled his duty, not worthy of pity. But what about you? You came alone to this Gixu prefecture, orphaned and helpless. If I leave, you will be alone once more. Yu Mingju clamped her hand over her crimson lips, desperately stifling her sobs. As death descended, her master's greatest concern was still her future. Choking back tears, she forced out a sentence with all her might. "Master, don't worry. Fang Chen has already promised to marry me, your disciple." In the forlorn wild elder's dim eyes, a flicker of light seemed to suddenly flash. A smile of relief emerged on his face. "Good, good, then I can set my heart at rest." He dared to slay a half giant in fury for the people of the 7 cities of Tianyuan. I believe he will undoubtedly protect you with everything he has in the future. I, your master, can be at ease. This big white rabbit I entrust to you. The legacy of the ruins is also with it. I have no more lingering attachments. At these words, he suddenly mustered his last strength to let out a low roar. Sheng Yan, your master, goes first. He visibly shuddered his frail frame with sudden force, hurling out all 4 remaining tombstones from his body. An earth-shattering boom resounded as the 4 tombstones slammed down near the First Army. The crisscrossing forces of law instantly swept across the area, leaving the giant kings of the First Army no escape. From once, star giant kings to 5, star giant kings, all exploded into massive clouds of bloody mist under the terrifying crush of laws. An entire army corps of giant kings was completely annihilated, not a single survivor. And the forlorn wild elder, after accomplishing all this, quietly lay prone on the ground, utterly devoid of his last breath of life. Master, Yu Mingju threw aside the stick in her hand and threw herself down before the forlorn wild elder, no longer able to contain her anguished wails. Thus, this great venerable of the 5 decays of heaven and man, known to very few, quietly fell outside the battlefield in a manner few would ever know. At the cost of his own life, he projected the lingering wills of the 6 sages onto this blood-soaked battlefield, reigniting a fervent hope for the central continent. Not far away, Fang Chen's eyes had already reddened. How could the tiny central continent endure countless cataclysms through the millennia without being destroyed? Precisely because at every historical moment of life and death, seniors like this, bearing a mission, would step forward without hesitation, using their lives to re-illuminate already darkened sky of the central continent. He abruptly turned around and gazed at the remnants of the Third Army, the killing intent in his eyes surging like tidal waves. Fang Chen drew the angel's blade and bellowed fiercely, "All of you, go to hell." He flashed over to a 3-star giant king that had fallen injured and could not rise, plunging his furious blade straight down. Enraged, the 3-star giant king shot out his long tongue to kill Fang Chen. But the moment that crimson tongue touched the angel's blade, it was like dry tinder meeting a fierce flame. Holy white fire instantly spread from the tongue into the mouth, then seeped into his colossal body. In the next moment, the 3-star giant king had no time even to scream before his entire gigantic body indubitably exploded into a sky full of holy specks of light. Angel's blade, a startled cry suddenly came from nearby. It was the injured, fallen Tian Qin. She stared at the blade, shimmering with holy light, her face full of disbelief. Fang Chen looked over coldly, thinking to himself, "I almost forgot about this woman." The white tiger immediately understood. With a low growl, it pounced, opening its blood, red maw to bite. "Hold, just subdue her," Fang Chen shouted. The white tiger instantly switched to a paw strike, swatting fiercely at Tian Qin. Tian Qin desperately tried to flee, but was still pinned firmly to the ground by the white tiger's claw. Fang Chen took out the immortal binding vine and bound her tightly from head to toe, inside and out. "Kill me if you want." Tian Qin glared at Fang Chen with eyes full of hatred, completely unafraid of death. Fang Chen hoisted her up, secretly amazed that the immortal binding vine was indeed extraordinary. Not only did it bind the physical body, but it also completely sealed off the opponent's innate bloodline and all her Asura power. He noticed Tianqin's murderous gaze and coldly glared back. Who said I was letting you go? I'm keeping you so that after the great battle ends, I can use your head and your brothers to pay homage to the fallen souls. For the casualties my central continent has suffered this time, you Dark Asura clan cannot shirk the blame. Without the armor they provided, without Tianjian's shameless sneak attack, this battle would never have been so difficult, and the forlorn wild elder would not have had to sacrifice himself. With that, he lifted his hand and tossed her into the spatial mirror, sternly saying, "Turncoat, watch her carefully and don't let her commit suicide. Later I will personally carve her to pieces with 1,000 cuts." From within the spatial mirror immediately came the turncoat's obedient voice. "Okay, big brother, I'll look after her, yup." Immediately after, the mirror echoed with Tianqin's repeated agonized screams. Fang Chen put away the mirror and surveyed the entire battlefield. The abrupt appearance of the 6 sage tombstones had already completely rewritten the battle situation. The first army was annihilated, the second army had only 50 odd giant kings left, and the third army 20. The fourth army was being dealt with by young Master Xiang alone, and the fifth army had only 20 left. In total, only 90 giant kings remained. In terms of numbers, the allied forces of 100 realms actually held a slight advantage. At once, everyone's spirits were greatly boosted, sweeping away the previous despair and gloom, reigniting towering fighting spirit. The cries of slaughter once again resounded across the entire battlefield. Fang Chen's gaze was as cold and sharp as a blade. Gripping the angel's blade, he rode the white tiger, leaping into the chaotic fray. As the allied forces of 100 realms pounced with unstoppable momentum, the giant kings successively suffered the poison mist and devastating blows, no longer able to maintain their previously overwhelming offensive. Instead, they were pushed back repeatedly by the human coalition. Especially when they saw Fang Chen charging over, those 1 star and 2 star giant kings were so terrified they turned tail and ran, not daring to engage in battle at all. The white tiger, the youth, the poison mist, these 3 elements combined, had already become a death shadow branded deep into their souls, striking utter terror into them. Several 5-star giant kings repeatedly barked orders, trying to stabilize the crumbling formation, but to little effect. With one side's morale soaring and the other's will to fight low, the total rout of the giant kings was only a matter of time. Up in the sky, the various sages watched the reversed fortunes on the ground, their hearts a mix of excitement and deep emotion. The Grand Libationer looked upon the forlorn wild elder's already lifeless body, his face showing boundless sorrow. When he looked again at the 6 Sun Giant Emperor, the cold light in his eyes practically overflowed. "It is your heavenly realm that has lost." The 6 Sun Giant Emperor's gaze was so gloomy, it seemed water could drip from it. He could not believe it even to death that a grand army of 400 giant kings, fighting a mere 100 coalition soldiers, would suffer defeat on the giant king's side. He had calculated everything, but never counted on Fang Chen possessing so much poison mist that countered the ancient giants, much less that an obscure Great Venerable would sacrifice himself, bearing the sage tombstones and going to death with such resolve. If the giant king's army had a few such figures, the battle could have taken a different turn. He slowly closed his eyes, his heart seething with unwillingness. He had mobilized all forces of the southern heaven realm, staking everything on a single throw, yet in the end it still resulted in a crushing defeat. But the central plains think it ends here, dream on. Even if I have to sacrifice the entire southern heaven realm, I will annihilate your central plains. The 6 Sun Giant Emperor roared ferociously. His fierce bellow rang out, "All of you, get down here." Above the heaven, piercing black pillar, the sky-wide blood clouds suddenly churned violently with a muffled roar, as if a doomsday tribulation was about to descend. Groups of ancient giants, ranging from 10 to over 10 zhang in height, fell from the firmament like a sudden torrential rain, crashing down in buckets. The earth was pounded with muffled booms one after another, the noise stabbing painfully at the eardrums. In the blink of an eye, over 1,000 nascent soul realm ancient giants had descended around the heaven, piercing black pillar. And this was just the beginning. Half an incense stick's time later, everywhere the eye could see, the space between heaven and earth was crammed with ancient giants, tightly packed, over 10,000 of them. Fang Chen couldn't help but draw a sharp breath, his heart surging with shock. The heavenly realm had been hiding so many ancient giants. These had to be the trump card that the central tribe had been holding in reserve. Previously, they had only sent the giant kings to descend. The ancient giants had never shown themselves. So they were saving them for this final moment, as the ace up their sleeve to turn the tide of battle. What sent an even greater chill down Fang Chen's spine was that some ancient giants carried a type of bottle filled with a crimson liquid. It was the water from the dreadful blood pools of the ancient abyss, capable of forcibly transforming foreign races into ancient giants. A look of resolve flashed in the six Sun Giant Emperor's eyes as he declared in a deep voice, "These are the last embers of my southern heaven realm. If they are all wiped out, for the next 1,000 years, my realm will lack the strength to wage war against you. I did not wish to use them, but for the annihilation of the central plains, I stake everything, kill." At that command, the boundless tide of ancient giants hurled itself ferociously at the coalition of the 100 Worlds. Although the coalition's divine transformation experts could all teleport, they were helpless against the fact that heaven and earth were packed solid with ancient giants, leaving not the slightest gap to be found. Moreover, giant kings were clinging to them relentlessly. The moment the giant tide submerged everyone, vast swaths of ancient giants were harvested in droves. But almost simultaneously, a ghastly howl suddenly rang out. It was a divine transformation realm demon lord from the central plains who had been attacked successively by several ancient giants. One of them hurled a blood bottle he could not dodge and was struck squarely. The blood pool water in the bottle instantly eroded his entire body, rotting him alive until nothing remained. This is the outcome of a failed transformation. Not long after, another giant king's roar erupted. Another central plains demon lord fell victim. Even more devastatingly, he was actually successfully transformed into a giant king and immediately turned to launch a vicious attack on his former comrades. Fang Chen was doing his utmost to blast apart the raging tide of ancient giants, while warily guarding against those carrying the blood water. It must be known that other races might fail several times before a successful transformation, but humans have a special constitution. Merely touching that blood water guarantees a 100% transformation. Hearing that someone had transformed into a giant king, Fang Chen's face changed drastically. He immediately clutched the sage crystal and tried to flicker towards that direction. But the overwhelming swarm of ancient giants encircled him layer upon layer. He himself was in dire peril, unable to move an inch. The coalition of the 100 Worlds, which had been slightly gaining the upper hand just moments ago, immediately suffered heavy casualties under the suicidal onslaught of the ancient giant tide. Everyone retreated step by step, desperately trying to break out towards the outer edge of the tide. But the giant kings seized the opportunity to cling to them relentlessly, leaving them no escape and no retreat. The mighty experts of all worlds were instantly plunged into a monumental life and death crisis. Fang Chen's gaze grew utterly grim. If this continued, not a single one of them would leave here alive. The sixth Sun Giant Emperor looked down at the swaths of rapidly diminishing ancient giants, his heart wrenching with pain. These giants were as fragile as weeds before divine transformation experts, being mowed down by the dozens and hundreds. In just a short while, over 1,000 had already fallen. Yet the situation of the coalition of the 100 Worlds was even more perilous. A sharp gleam blazed in his eyes as he coldly uttered, "Our southern heaven realm has won. The 10,000 years of resistance of your central plains shall now be put to a full stop." As soon as the words left his mouth, he suddenly looked around in shock and suspicion. At the same time, the human sages also showed expressions of alarm, scanning in all directions, because they all clearly sensed that the righteous aura between heaven and earth was rapidly diminishing. This was someone making a wish, a grand world, shaking wish to heaven and earth. Fang Chen also abruptly perceived this eerie fluctuation. Before he could understand, an ethereal and majestic voice already blanketed the entire battlefield, all on the battlefield except the giant kings, come to the Sea of Literature Academy. As the voice faded, Fang Chen, True Word Venerable, White Tiger, and the Central Plains and Foreign World experts in the distance were all enveloped by a gentle yet irresistible force of space. With a soft whoosh, everyone vanished from their original positions, forcibly extricated from the ancient giant tide. Fang Chen felt the world spin around him, his feet unsteady. When his feet touched solid ground again, he found himself within a secluded academy, nestled among bamboo groves. This academy was firmly protected by a sage, level grand array. Within the courtyard, regardless of whether they were experts of the first heavenly decline or the several grandmasters, without exception, all had been teleported here. Crimson Demon Grandmaster clutched the wound of his severed arm and couldn't help but look at the middle-aged man in blue robes standing with hands behind his back in the courtyard, demanding, "Xingyuan, why didn't you act sooner? If we had made use of such vast righteous aura to make a wish earlier, our previous battle wouldn't have been so arduous." Not just him, the other Grandmasters also frowned and looked towards Xingyuan Grandmaster. As the Grandmaster stationed in the primordial chaos prefecture, he had not appeared at all during the entire affair, which was truly inexcusable. Xingyuan Grandmaster turned around, gazing at them with a solemn expression. His gaze roughly swept over everyone, and he forced out a faint smile, as if letting out a sigh of relief. The casualties are far lower than anticipated. This is a blessing for the Central Plains. Crimson Demon Grandmaster grew even more displeased. "I asked you a question." Xingyuan Grandmaster then fixed his gaze seriously on Crimson Demon Grandmaster. He cupped his hands in salute and said in a deep voice, "Senior Crimson Demon, ever since the Central Plains' great defeat 1,000 years ago, our primordial chaos prefecture begging and preparing for today's final battle." So saying, he raised his foot and stomped heavily on the ground. A series of cracking sounds rang out, and the entire ground of the Sea of Literature Academy split open. The earth, buildings, and vegetation were all destroyed, revealing what lay buried beneath. It was not the imagined billowing magma, but wish fruits. Indeed, one after another, countless wish fruits. They were piled like mountains, filling the entire underground of the Sea of Literature Academy, extending to astonishing depths. Crimson Demon Grandmaster was taken aback, exclaiming in shock, "There are so many wish fruits." Wish fruits are treasures formed when great Confucian cultivators of the nascent soul realm and above, before passing away, seal their entire righteous aura into a vessel. And the number of wish fruits before them numbered in the thousands. Xingyuan Grandmaster gazed at the wish fruits underground, his face filled with reverence, and said slowly, 10,000 years of war, 1,000-year cataclysm of reincarnation. Generation after generation, tormented in suffering, our Confucian lineage prided itself on bringing peace to all ages and continuing the lost teachings of past sages. But the ancient sages cannot be seen and peace cannot be found. We have ultimately failed the teachings of the Confucian forebears. Therefore, 1,000 years ago, the Confucian Grandmasters resolved to forever eradicate the scourge of the giants, devising an extermination plan for the ancient giants named Espring Mud. The crowd murmured the two words, their hearts full of perplexity. Spring Mud? What kind of plan was this, one worth 1,000 years of preparation by the Confucians of an entire prefecture? Xingyuan Grandmaster revealed the answer lightly. This plan is the sinking of the primordial chaos prefecture. Sinking into the void together with all the ancient giants, leaving the skies of the Central Plains forever. Rumble! It was as if countless thunderbolts exploded above everyone's heads, leaving their minds blank with shock. What were the Confucians trying to do? They actually intended to sink the entire primordial chaos prefecture. Red Demon Great Venerable trembled slightly all over, sharply rebuking, "Are you mad? If an entire state collapses, how could the saints ever forgive you?" Star Abyss Great Venerable, however, smiled with profound relief. "When I made this eternal great vow of sinking primordial chaos state, I imagine I would already be long gone." An immense shock tightly choked everyone's throats, rendering them utterly speechless. Indeed, such an ultimate great vow that sinks an entire state, how could it come without a price? No wonder Star Abyss Great Venerable did not lift a finger throughout. He was maintaining his body's optimal condition to prepare for the wish. Only then could he fulfill this final grand vow before death descended. Red Demon Great Venerable's aged eyes instantly reddened, lowering her gaze to the wish fruits beneath her feet. What noble spirit was this? It was clearly the unyielding will of Confucian cultivators persisting for 1,000 years, the most beautiful blessings bestowed by generation after generation of Confucian cultivators upon people a millennium hence. The tomorrow they themselves could not witness, they hoped future generations could see on their behalf. Star Abyss Red Demon Great Venerable's old tears rolled down. Trembling, she stepped forward and grabbed his arm. An overwhelming sense of shame surged in her heart, and she sobbed, "I'm sorry, it is the fault of our generation. We overdrew the Central Plains, forged that era of utmost glory, yet failed to completely annihilate the heavenly realm, leaving you endless calamities. And now we even require your generation to continuously sacrifice yourselves. I'm sorry." Star Abyss Great Venerable reached out to steady her arm, gently shaking his head. The ancestors already gave their all. So many sages fell, so many nameless martyrs sleep forever. How dare we, the later generations, blame you? Now, let us descendants inherit your legacy, utterly exterminate the ancient giants, and forever purge this peril for our next generation. Red Demon Great Venerable was so ashamed she could not utter a single word. Recalling that she had just accused Star Abyss Great Venerable of standing idle, she felt utterly mortified. Her gaze abruptly turned resolute, and she declared loudly, "Then I shall make the wish, that unfinished battle from 1,000 years ago. Let these old bones of mine put an end to it." Star Abyss Great Venerable, however, gently patted her arm and shook his head with a faint smile. "Senior, you have been weary for a millennium. Since you finally have a chance to rest, please rest well." With that, Star Abyss Great Venerable turned his gaze sideways, slowly scanning the people present. His gaze passed over Fang Chen, then settled on Genuine Reverend, who was holding onto Fang Chen's arm. In that moment, a soft and relieved light surfaced in his eyes. The final attachment, at last, could also be laid to rest. Genuine Reverend slightly parted her red lips. Her heart was deeply moved by Star Abyss Great Venerable's millennium-long grand scheme for primordial chaos state. But in a fleeting thought, she recalled how Star Abyss Great Venerable had failed her mother. She abruptly turned around and silently walked away. Fang Chen instinctively reached out to pull her back, thinking to himself, "Star Abyss Great Venerable is already prepared to die. Why must you still cling to such obstinacy?" Star Abyss Great Venerable, however, gently waved his hand and said indifferently, "Forget it, let her be." He strode up to Fang Chen, patting his shoulder with a face full of gratification, and laughed brightly. "Fine lad, I truly underestimated you. You are far more outstanding than I ever imagined." In truth, though his original body was not on the battlefield, his paper effigy clone had always been present. He witnessed with his own eyes how Fang Chen, relying on his domain and poison mist, turned the tide on 2 separate occasions, and watched as he returned in glory, carrying the beam of light marking him as the first place of the primordial hunt. These valiant deeds stirred in him a myriad of emotions. The little rascal, who once took advantage of his own daughter, has now become a hero who saved the Central Plains. Fang Chen hastily said, "It was the blue wish paper you gave me that played a crucial role. Without that wish paper, I might not have returned to the Central Plains, let alone brought so many people back with me." Star Abyss Great Venerable shook his head, speaking heavily. "If the same wish paper were given to others, could they necessarily achieve what you did? Fang Chen, your future will reach far. If possible, please take Shenyun with you. If one day you no longer like her, it's fine, just let her go. Only do not mistreat her, all right. In this world, she has no more family." Fang Chen's throat suddenly choked up. Before he died, what Star Abyss Great Venerable always cared about most was his own daughter. Fang Chen raised his hand and pointed to his divine ring, his voice low yet resolute. "Senior, I will never betray her." Star Abyss Great Venerable smiled with relief. "Thank you." He knew that Fang Chen cultivated the flawless domain, having made a public pledge he would never break it. At last he could be at ease. Suddenly, a rumbling, muffled roar erupted from the distant horizon. At the edge of the sky, densely packed ancient giants surged forward like a tidal wave. Star Abyss Great Venerable clasped his hands behind his back, walked slowly to the edge of the formation, and asked softly, "Fang Chen, do you know why this plan is called Spring Mud?" Fang Chen pondered briefly, then spoke. "Fallen petals are not heartless things. Turning into spring mud, they better protect the flowers." "Is it the spring mud from this poem?" Star Abyss Great Venerable turned back, smiling at everyone, then slowly surveyed his surroundings. His gaze seemed to transcend primordial chaos state, looking toward the teeming multitudes of the other 8 states. "Why does the Central Plains never perish, enduring through eternity? It is precisely because generation after generation of people sacrifice themselves, turning into spring mud, nourishing those who come after. Today, it is my turn." Fang Chen's eyes reddened slightly. He pressed, "Is there truly no other way?" Star Abyss Great Venerable's expression was calm as he spoke slowly. "Perhaps there is, but this is already the best moment. All the giant kings of the heavenly realm and the vast majority of nascent soul giants are now gathered in primordial chaos state. Once they die, from then on, the giants will never again amount to anything." He paused deliberately, then added, "By the way, do not feel guilty about the fact that Grand Libationer was targeted early by the 9 Suns Giant Emperor because of your actions. In order to lure all the giants to descend upon primordial chaos state, Grand Libationer had already decided long ago to expose himself ahead of time. Even without the matter of saving you, he would have exposed himself through other events." Fang Chen's expression suddenly froze. Only then did he fully understand that the defeat of Primordial Chaos State was itself part of the Spring Mud Plan. Only by turning Primordial Chaos State into the main battlefield for the Giants, drawing the main force of the ancient giants to descend, would the sinking of Primordial Chaos State hold true meaning. Rumble. The tidal wave of ancient giants approached even faster. Led by over 100 giant kings, they charged ferociously toward Wen High Academy. Looking out, their colossal bodies, like mountains, stretched endlessly. This was the main force of the Heavenly Realm giants. If not stopped, this unstoppable torrent would surely flood into all states of the Central Plains, annihilating all life. Star Abyss Great Venerable stepped out alone to the outside of the formation, his back to the crowd, saying gravely, "Farewell, fellow cultivators of the Central Plains." The protective barrier of this Wen High Academy was set up by a senior I entrusted. After Primordial Chaos State sinks, it will shelter you and teleport you randomly to the other states. I hope, in a future where I am no longer here, the rivers and mountains remain untouched, and the years are tranquil and serene. I am off. As his words fell, he leaped into the air. The wish fruits buried beneath Wen High Academy instantly transformed into a sky full of flowing light, soaring into the air in unison. Those lights tightly surrounded him, shooting straight up into the ninth heaven. The noble spirit within him also surged out like a tsunami with a thunderous roar. Fang Chen raised his head, staring directly at Star Abyss Great Venerable's figure, his nose stinging with unspeakable sorrow. Suddenly, he felt a slight weight on his shoulder. It was Genuine Reverend, pressing her forehead against his shoulder. Soon, a warm wetness slowly soaked through his clothes. Fang Chen said softly, "Won't you really say a few words to him?" Genuine Reverend shook her head, and with a trembling voice said softly, "He goes for the ideals of the Confucian cultivators. I must not become his lingering attachment." In truth, she already regretted it. If she had known earlier that Star Abyss Great Venerable would die, she might have changed her mind and acknowledged him as her father sooner. But all this came far too suddenly and far too late. Fang Chen lifted his arm and tightly embraced her, whispering, "Then take one last look at him." Genuine Reverend hesitated for a moment, then slowly raised her face. With tearful eyes, she gazed at the figure in the sky, and from her lips came a trembling murmur, "Father." Numerous great exalteds and divine transformation experts raised their heads, gazing into the distance. The experts from other worlds also raised their heads at that moment, their eyes filled with heartfelt reverence. Young Master Xiang held a jade cup, offering a distant toast to the heavens. Green mountains bury loyal bones. The Central Plains lay heroes' souls to rest. This Emperor toasts you. May you depart in peace. At that very moment, great exalted Xingyuan resolutely activated his wish. He gazed at the endless tide of ancient giants ahead, his voice clear and powerful, echoing through heaven and earth. I, Xingyuan of Hunyuan Prefecture in the Central Plains, make a wish to the heavens and the earth. May Hunyuan Prefecture sink into the void, never to return. The sound of that wish lingered in the vast sky for a long time. Hunyuan sink into nothingness, never to return. After the sound reverberated 3 times in succession, heaven and earth finally responded. The righteous Kai, unleashed by great exalted Xingyuan, burned out in an instant like a fierce flame. A great exalted at the 5 decays of Heavenly Man realm saw his entire righteous Kai drop to 0 on the spot. Yet his righteous Kai was merely a catalyst. This catalyst instantly detonated the vast righteous Kai stored in the atmosphere of all Hunyuan Prefecture. The wish was activated. In an instant, Hunyuan Prefecture trembled and quaked. Countless black fissures tore open in the sky, spreading densely from the horizon to every corner of Hunyuan Prefecture. Terrifying chasms, like abyssal canyons, ripped through the land. The vital spiritual Kai between heaven and earth rapidly dissipated as surges of void, imbued destructive aura poured in. But this was not enough. PFFD, 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 PFFD. The wish fruits carrying the 1,000-year blessings of countless Confucian cultivators shattered one after another, transforming into boundless righteous Kai that was detonated fiercely. It seemed as if even the heavens above could sense the unyielding resolve within this wish. A force of unfathomable magnitude and profound mystery descended boldly upon the land of Hunyuan Prefecture, which had endured for eons. Crack! A terrifyingly soul-shaking sound of rupture suddenly boomed. It was the sound of the spatial barrier connecting Hunyuan Prefecture to the Central Plains breaking. Crack, crack, crack. Immediately, one rupture after another resounded incessantly along every border of Hunyuan Prefecture. Once all the surrounding spatial barriers were severed, Hunyuan Prefecture would lose its anchor and sink into the eternal void. At this moment, the sages and giant emperors battling in the heavenly realm finally noticed this heaven, shaking up Hevel with horrified eyes. The 8 great libationers seemed to have anticipated this scene, their faces filled with grief as they murmured, "In the end, it has come to this. Xingyuan, farewell, and may you journey well." Wanyan Sage, Tianluo Sage, and Red-faced Sage also looked utterly astonished. In a flash, their expressions turned solemn and compassionate as they shouted loudly, "Xingyuan, may you depart in peace." The distant 9, Nether Demon Venerable, also looked over, a rare respect emerging in his eyes as he sighed. Among the human race, there are indeed some who are not so detestable. Farewell, fellow cultivator of the human race. In contrast, the giant emperor's faces all drastically changed. The 6th Sun Giant Emperor was utterly horrified and roared in disbelief, "Madmen of Hunyuan Prefecture. A bunch of lunatics. They spent 1,000 years just to sacrifice their homeland and perish together with the enemy." He was completely desperate. The vast majority of the heavenly realm's elite giant forces were now all committed to Hunyuan Prefecture. If they sank along with Hunyuan Prefecture, the heavenly realm would never recover its vitality, and he, the emperor of the central tribe, would become a sinner for all ages. He regretted it. Long ago, when Fang Chen went hunting in the primordial wilderness, he should have decisively withdrawn. But he had staked everything on a single throw, betting the entire heavenly realm's future on this gamble of fate. He never imagined that the people of the Central Plains were all madmen, every goddamn one of them. Each one of them values life not, and they can even cast aside the great prefecture where they dwell without a second thought. Now, it was too late for him to order the giants to retreat. Just as his eyes were about to burst with rage, he suddenly noticed 3 extremely special figures from the Central Plains standing in the Wenhai Academy beneath Great Exalted Xingyuan. The tallest was over 9 jang, and the shortest was 6 or 7 jang tall. Around each figure, Dharma manifestation halos shimmered heavily. The moment the 6th Sun Giant Emperor's gaze fell upon those 3, his heart pounded like a war drum in his chest, and a nearly manic ecstasy burst from his eyes. He threw his head back and laughed wildly, trembling with excitement as he bellowed, "Heaven has not abandoned my southern heavenly realm." To dare shelter half, giants bearing our ancient giant bloodline, Central Plains, oh Central Plains, you truly dig your own grave. As soon as he spoke, the ancient giant bloodline within him suddenly began to tremble violently. At the same time, inside Wenhai Academy, the city master of Tianyi was whispering and conspiring furtively with 2 half-giants at the 3-phase realm. One of the half-giants said worriedly, "City master, the great battle is about to end. We should start planning our escape route early." The other added, "Those 400 giant kings likely arrived by using our Gixu prefecture-level teleportation array. Once this comes to light, where can we giants still find refuge in the Central Plains?" The city master of Tianyi slapped his thigh heavily, saying bitterly, "Damnation! Why did no one tell us that the ancient giants of the heavenly realm could influence us through our bloodline? If not for that, when the ancient giant bloodline awakened during the heavenly hunt, it wouldn't have implicated us giants in the lower realm, causing us to lose our minds in the 7 cities of Tianyuan and go on a killing spree." He sighed deeply, his tone growing heavier. Although compassionate sage helped cover this up, the 400 giant kings descending upon Tianyi City, controlling us giants, then making us raid the observatory to seize the prefecture-level teleportation array, this matter can no longer be hidden. The sages of the Central Plains will no longer tolerate us. At this, the city master of Tianyi's eyes flickered with uncertainty, momentarily lost and at a loss. Just as he was deeply worried, his body suddenly shuddered violently. The half of his ancient giant bloodline suddenly boiled like raging water. Immediately after, he completely lost control of his body. With a low cry filled with horror, the city master of Tianyi exclaimed, "Oh no, the ancient giants are going to control me." A quick glance showed that his 2 clansmen had already been controlled a step ahead. Without warning, those 2 soared into the air, flashed, and teleported straight toward Great Exalted Xingyuan overhead. But the moment they made a move, a muffled boom thundered out as an enormous paw, the size of a small mountain, came crashing down from the sky, instantly blasting their bodies apart. A 20-janked, all-white tiger suddenly blocked the way, with Fang Chen and True Word Venerable standing atop its head. Still holding True Word Venerable in his arms, Fang Chen's gaze was cold as ice as he stared at them and shouted, "I knew you treacherous scum wouldn't stay quiet." From start to finish, he had never trusted the half-giants. These turncoats who fed on their own kind and even aided the giants on the battlefield, how could Fang Chen overlook them at such a critical moment? He had been secretly guarding against them all along. With a piercing sonic boom of swoosh, the space beside him suddenly exploded. The city master of Tianyi had also made his move. As a great exalted, his strike carried world, shattering might, giving no one a chance to react. And his target was likewise great exalted Xingyuan. Fang Chen's expression drastically changed. Fortunately, at the critical moment, a brilliant beam of light from the Big Dipper descended from the sky, forcibly blasting the city master of Tianyi back out of his teleportation. A graceful immortal figure with flowing silver hair flickered into view. It was none other than the master of Star Cluster Mountain. If anyone in the Central Plains was most vigilant against half-giants besides Fang Chen, it was the master of Star Cluster Mountain. The cannibalism incident in the 7 cities of Tianyuan had left her deeply wary to this day. The other great exalteds also reacted, glaring at the city master of Tianyi in unison. Upon closer look, everyone saw that the city master of Tianyi's black veins bulged prominently on his skin, and his eyes were filled with a madness akin to that of a wild beast. Someone cried out in shock, "He has lost his mind." Another said in a deep voice, "No, is he being controlled? It's the ancient giants controlling him, trying to make him assassinate great, exalted Xingyuan and stop the wish. Damnation, the ancient giants can actually control half-giants. How come no one ever discovered this?" The starry mountain lord's beautiful face contorted, and she exclaimed, "Then the half-giants of the Void Return Prefecture have also all been controlled." Only then did everyone suddenly realize the truth. They finally understood how that army of 400 giant kings had arrived on the battlefield ahead of time. It was the half-giants of Heaven's Relic City who aided them. Only they could have made the stellar observatory guards lower their guard, then struck without warning to seize the prefecture, level teleportation array. The golden scale, Great Venerable, blazed with fury and roared, "These bastard animals. We warned they couldn't be trusted, but the Merciful Heart Sage kept shielding them. Now they've aided evil and caused a calamity of heaven's size. Merciful Heart Sage, you must bear full responsibility." Fang Chen was also enraged to the extreme. If not for those beasts of Heaven's Relic City helping the 400 giant kings reach the battlefield, why would the heartless wild elder have had to sacrifice himself, carry in the stone steel to aid us? Wait. He suddenly recalled that old incident of the 7 cities of the Celestial Abyss. The Merciful Heart Sage went so far as to deploy the law of time reversion to cover up the truth of half-giants eating people in the 7 cities of the Celestial Abyss, and even erased all the memories of the sole surviving witness, a female Great Venerable who had seen everything. Several sages had questioned what the Merciful Heart Sage was hiding, but he kept his mouth tightly shut. Now the truth is finally revealed, as clear as water and stone. It is that half-giants can be controlled by the ancient giants. Once this matter comes to light, the half-giants will inevitably be slaughtered to extinction by the Middle Lands. Then, as the protector of half-giants, he would completely lose his source of meritorious virtue, and could never advance further in the sage realm. So, for the sake of his own petty cultivation, he didn't hesitate to hide the truth, disregarding the safety of the entire Middle Lands. Fang Chen could endure no more and roared to the heavens, "Merciful Heart, you old dog. You damn well dare call yourself a sage of the Middle Lands." Everyone gradually recovered their senses, their pupils all contracting sharply, faces contorting in disbelief. The Merciful Heart Sage had known all along, but instead of warning everyone, he deliberately shielded the half-giants. Thinking of the heartless wild elder's sacrifice, of the final battle that should never have happened, of so many dying with resentment under the iron hooves of the 400 geese and kings, they were all enraged. This old dog is utterly unworthy to be a sage. With the heaven-shaking roar, the Heaven's Relic City Lord struck again. His action thoroughly enraged everyone present. The Golden Scale Great Venerable, Ice-Hot Great Venerable, 10,000 Weapons Great Venerable, First, Rank Master of Square Mountain Pavilion, and Starry Mountain Lord all attacked in fury. From the sky canopy, the Merciful Heart Sage's angry shout suddenly came, "Stop, I'll see who dares kill one of my people." Even at this moment, he still wants to protect the Heaven's Relic City Lord. Fang Chen, unable to contain his rage, charged over on his white tiger mount. The other Great Venerables were also consumed by rage, with no intention of stopping, and swarmed to attack. The Heaven's Relic City Lord hurriedly activated his Dharma Aspect Realm. The Dharma aspect realm he had been reluctant to use against the giants, he now unleashed without mercy against the people of the Middle Lands. Alas, he faced the combined assault of all the great venerables of the Middle Lands. His Dharma aspect was instantly blasted to smithereens, and his 9, shanked. All body was pounded deep into the earth, with only his head exposed. Under the violent impact, the Heaven's Relic City Lord finally broke free from the control. Facing the murderous expressions of the great venerables, he pleaded in terror, "Fellow Taoists, spare me. I was merely controlled by the ancient giants. This was never my intention." A few great venerables paused, frowning in thought. Only Fang Chen showed no mercy, driving the angel's blade fiercely into his skull, and coldly shouted, "Explain yourself to your giant ancestors. The Middle Lands have no place for you." The Heaven's Relic City Lord roared repeatedly, "Fang Chen, you're too ruthless. Aren't we half giants people of the Middle Lands too?" Without another word, Fang Chen viciously thrust the angel's blade in. Powerful holy light instantly poured into his body, and the body that carried half-ancient giant blood was immediately subjected to a devastating attack of holy light. With a muffled boom, half his body directly turned into a bloody mist, leaving only the larger half still buried in the soil. The half-destroyed massive head glared venomously at Fang Chen, its mouth moving as if uttering a vicious curse. Alas, not a single word could come out. After a few painful struggles, the head finally drooped lifelessly, its vitality completely extinguished. Even his soul, being half-ancient giant blood, was obliterated by the holy light, vanishing into nothingness, losing even the chance to possess another body and cultivate anew. Fang Chen pulled out the angel's blade and said icily, "Now, you're fit to be a person of the Middle Lands. Don't worry, you won't be lonely. When I return from the primordial wilds hunt, I'll send all your clansmen down to join you, not one left." As his words fell, a heaven-shaking rumble echoed all around, and the ground began to rapidly sink. Spatial barriers around them had already fractured. The primordial unity prefecture was beginning to sink. When the tens of thousands of ancient giant tide surged to the front of the academy, they finally sensed something was wrong. They fled back in terror, trying to escape through the sky, reaching Black Pillar. But could it be so easy? Amidst the terrifying rumbling, the primordial unity prefecture plummeted down like a giant rock falling from the sky. After 10 breaths, with a sky-shattering, earth-rending roar, it completely detached from the Middle Lands and plunged into the infinite darkness of the void. Wave after wave of terrifying spatial force swept across the entire prefecture like a tsunami. The boundless prefecture instantly disintegrated, torn into countless continental fragments. The mountains, rivers, and vegetation upon it turned to dust in an instant, and the spirit beasts that couldn't evacuate in time were torn to shreds in the blink of an eye.